So, by the way, I was muted for about 5 seconds if you couldn't hear me. So let's try this intro one more time. I apologize, everyone. Welcome to the Cluster Puck Podcast, part of the MHRT network here at Center Ice. I'm Nick, and here shortly is Brit. And boy, what a week she had. Just talking with her just a few minutes ago. And she's trying to get stuff put together to hop on and whatnot. And like I said, she'll be in here in a few minutes. But her house, and she could kind of tell you a bit more of this when she hops on. But her house was struck by lightning. Yikes! First of all, but she said like everything in her house was just fried. She said it was definitely one of the scariest moments in her life. She said 2 TVs, an Xbox, the dishwasher, the modem, the DVD player, and the mesh system all fried, all gone. Definitely that's a scary experience for sure. I know out there in the plains in Iowa that lightning storms do get a bit dicey. We get a few here in Utah, but nothing compared to probably what Iowa has to go through. So she says she's going to try to get something figured out, probably join on her phone here in the next few minutes. So you'll have to bear with us in the meantime. But before we get into anything and kind of what we're going to be doing today, don't forget everyone to like and subscribe, follow the MHRT network so you can get notified when shows like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. You can follow them on the various social media platforms of your choosing, wherever you find your podcasts. If you want to follow us specifically, you can follow us at Clusterpuck Avs, AVS, on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, and at the Clusterpuck Podcast on Facebook. Okay, so we're going to split this one into a two-parter, I think, just because there's a lot to talk about. These are season grades, is what I'm referring to. And obviously, a lot of people were asking kind of what our overall thoughts were compared to the middle of the season and kind of what has changed, what hasn't changed, good, bad, whatever. So we're going to go through all of that. I think we're going to probably divide it into goalies / defense and kind of other supporting characters this week. And then the meat and potatoes, probably the ones that you really want to see next week. So it's kind of, we're going to separate it into two parts. So before we get into that, though, just a quick update regarding Val Nichushkin. And there was some news that came out, maybe not next like groundbreaking news, but just some news that came out that Val Nichushkin, there may be a way, there may not be a way to arrange some sort of a buyout agreement or contract termination agreement with the NHL when it comes to Val Nichushkin, if the Avalanche are going to explore that option. Obviously, it was said in an announcement last week, obviously with Gabe Landeskog saying he's still planning on coming back and whatnot. The quote of Val Nichushkin came up, and people were like, well, what are you going to do with that? What are your thoughts? And it's tough because there were a lot of people that still like him, and rightfully so. He's a great guy, phenomenal hockey player, and in our season grade that we'll give him, spoiler alert, it's an A, right? Like he was a great player, but it's just one of those things where it's just hard to come back from when you have extracurricular activities that happen 2 postseasons in a row, despite what you've done in the regular season, the strides that you tried to take to come back from the player assistance program, all that stuff. So, and then Gabe Landeskog, to kind of conclude on that thought, Gabe Landeskog did say, there could be a way that he comes back and plays again. Obviously, it's a long thought out, you need to think this out type of process. This, a lot of people want to jump the gun and say, that's the second offense in as many seasons, you're out, you're done, we don't trust you anymore. And they have every reason to, and it wouldn't be surprising if that is the direction that the Avalanche took. But they kind of alluded to the fact that during some contract analysis, it might not be possible for us to let him go. And we did mention that last week. So stuff to still be worked on. Obviously, we wish Val the best and kind of hope that whatever is happening with his rehab or drug addiction, whatever it actually ended up being, that he does come over it, because it's tough to see one of your star players essentially go from winning the Stanley Cup to having something happen in the following postseason to then getting some rehab in the middle of the ensuing season, and ultimately having another kind of mishap this postseason. So hard, very difficult. But we'll kind of keep tabs on the Val Nichushkin situation. But other than that, there wasn't a whole ton of news as far as the Avalanche and their off season is concerned. So with that being said, we will go ahead and I will at least start to lay down my grades on the various players for today. So let me pull up a list real fast of players of who we're going to cover today. Like I said, we're probably going to do goaltending, defense, and some supporting cast, and see kind of where that takes us on time. So first one's first. I mean, goaltending, we'll start with Justus Annunen first. Obviously, he was given the backup role for the Avalanche, especially late in the season, where it got to a point where it was 2 for Georgiev, 1 for Annunen, and so on and so forth. Overall, though, given the fact that he got a contract and stuff like that, so that he's kind of the solidified backup goaltender for the Avalanche going forward, I would give him probably a B minus or C plus, somewhere kind of in that range. I guess to be nice, I'll say a B minus, given the fact that he did post 2 back-to-back shutouts, granted against the same team, the Blackhawks, but it's a shutout nonetheless, right? The big thing for me about Justus Annunen was the fact that he took such a big leap from last year to this year, or last season to this season. Obviously a pretty solid number, considering he's only had like 13 starts, something like that. He went 8-4-1. Had a save average of 0.928, which is pretty good. Obviously 2 shutouts, like we said. But his goals allowed per game was at 2.25, which is pretty respectable. You know, if you consider just one goal a period, that's a 3.0 in your goals average per game, right? So he allowed less than 1 goal per period in the game, and that's in 13 starts. So it's a decent sample size. However, the reason it's not astronomically high and overpassing everyone is the fact that he only did play 13 games, right? If he was able to play more and show off more, obviously that grade would be able to come up. But I think it's only fair right now to give Justus Annunen that B minus C plus kind of range. I believe we covered him in the midseason. I tried to go back and look at all the grades that we gave players in the midseason. Couldn't find it for some reason. I know it's there because I was trying to do some contrasting whatnot. But I think overall, based off this regular season, new grades are going to be a thing anyway. So if you guys want to go back and look at what we gave people in the midseason versus now after the regular season is over, feel free to do that. And don't forget, everyone, to share your thoughts on season grades for everyone as well. So don't forget to do that. Okay, but continuing back, going one more thing on Justus Annunen. I really enjoyed the fact that he was able to show more of his stretching and lengthening skills and stuff like that. And there's Brit.
Hello.
You all right?
Yeah, hopefully if it freezes up or if I'm behind you, sorry, I am hot spotting it. Have you guys had any internet or phone outages through Verizon, or do you use Verizon?
I'm personnel with my with Verizon on my phone, but yeah, I haven't had any spotty coverage. So,
Oh, well, lucky me. Apparently, it's like a national thing. Like my phone just keeps going to SOS. Apparently, it's happening like all over the country, so that's cool. So yeah, if
Well,
I
how
lose
about
you,
it?
I also don't have Wi-Fi. So
Yeah, I was just telling people right as I was hopping on here, the house was struck by lightning.
yeah, it was, just another chapter in the life of Brittany.
Just another day in Iowa, right?
Oh my God, it was
Um,
scary. I thought it was living like in a fever dream for the next day. It was so loud. I am glad to still be alive just from not being scared to death, actual death.
yeah, no kidding. No kidding. So we were talking season grades this week and obviously next week as well. We're going to do goaltending, defense, and some supporting cast and see how far that takes us today. So we started with Eustace Andernon, and you caught me just at the tail end of Eustace Andernon. I gave him a B minus, C plus kind of area, just given the fact that he had a small sample size, but did okay with that sample size. Pretty all right.
Yeah, well, I
So
mean, B minus is right where I land with him too. I think that he did the job that he was called to do. I don't think that it was spectacular by any, but I don't think that it can be held against him. Um, People are a lot more high on him than I am, I think. A lot of people seem to think that, especially with wanting to start him in the playoffs, like I think we definitely got to cool our jets on him. But yeah, I think a B minus is perfect. He did, he got a couple shutouts against the Blackhawks though. So I mean, I have a reasonable take on him, and I think B minus is where I land too.
very good. Okay, moving on. Obviously, I'm going to kind of keep the ones that didn't have a big sample size on for like Ivan Prosvetov as well as he had in some games. We're just going to stick with those that kind of ended up on the roster.
Yeah.
So that being said, the main goaltender, Alexander Georgiev. Brit, obviously, we're big advocates for this man. So what's your gut feeling? What's the final season grade from the regular season?
My gut feeling is nausea. Trying to settle on like where I stood here because like honestly, like any given week throughout the season, you could have landed on something different. Like if you asked me the first 10 games, not good. And then you got to like the lows before Christmas. But then after All-Star break, he was an A++. And then 1 week before playoffs, he was like a F minus expelled. But I think what I've kind of landed on is that I'm of the mind at this point where if he can get us through the regular season, and I'm with this for a lot of players, like there's a lot of players that are mediocre, like regular season players, and then show up in the playoffs. And I value that a lot more than regular season performance. Like Austin Matthews, 70 goals is super awesome. But then when you barely show up in the playoffs, like I'm just not here for that. So I settled on a B for Georgie. And I know a lot of people aren't going to disagree, but I truly believe that he was the MVP for the playoffs, and that's what matters. If he needs to, and he really hasn't had a fair shake for 2 full seasons as far as like playing time being overplayed, the team playing erratic in front of him. So I think a B is where I feel is fair. It averaged out between playoffs and regular season to where I think I land on a B with him.
Yeah. I mean, and then it's justified, right? You're completely right. I originally had him at a B as well until I was kind of watching some just defensive highlights throughout the season. And I was like, as much as we love to just hate on the guy, and I say we loosely, everyone but the two of us, it really seems
Right.
as much as we love to hate on the guy and kind of just say, hey, this is all your fault. There were a lot of games where it was a close game. Either we were down by one, tied up by one, kind of in that range where Georgiev just made these impressive like leg stops or these wraparound tries that he just, desperate attempt and keeps it out.
If he got back mentally, I mean, he pretty much only sucked in the beginning of games. Like he really was able to shut it down.
Yep. And I think just looking at it, I was kind of like, overall, you look at the record that he did, and it's like the numbers kind of stood for themselves, right? Obviously, like a 9 point up or a 0.90 save average is on the lower side, considering the type of player that we want to have. But just looking at all these important saves that he's made, and exactly, right? I think just based off of the important timed saves, I would give Georgiev a B plus. And again, he didn't have a stellar, lights out Vezina performance, but he wasn't terrible at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, and you were exactly right when you said if he catches a stride, and we've seen him do this, if he catches a good stride, he's lights out great.
He's very capable of being an A+. It's just finding the consistency. The consistency is the difference.
And that's exactly why
an A+ in the playoffs, then I'm fine with a C+ in the regular season. Like it's like the Tampa mentality. Just get us to playoffs. We don't care about the regular season.
Yep. And you saw that, you know, obviously these grades are based off of kind of the regular season, but there is a bit of that postseason that I do not unfortunate, but I am willing to put that into consideration given the fact that game 1 on the Winnipeg series, atrocious. He wasn't good.
Right. Rock bottom.
But the remaining 4 games, he was really, really good. And I was saying this just kind of to everybody before you hopped on with the save percentage or goals allowed per game, I should say. I said if you allow 1 per period, that's a 3.0, right? And if you have less than that, you're in good shape. And Georgiev was right at that 3.0, if not less, in that Winnipeg series. And there were a lot of times where he would.
Sorry.
He had overall through the entire season, he had a 3.02. So he's right hovering around that average.
Like a couple games. I wonder if you took out like 2 games out of those statistics, the 2, like the Vegas game that was like 7, right? Because there was one that he stayed in for a full 7, didn't he? Because
there were a couple that he stayed in for the whole blowout. Yeah.
If you took game 1 out of the playoffs, I'd imagine that totally looks like a bottle of tequila from here.
No, just little Love's water.
Just like a real bottle of tequila. Yeah, I would be curious. Like if you took out game 1,
grades, man.
I would imagine he's finishing as almost one of the top performers in the playoffs statistically.
And I think you're right. So I think it's fair to give him obviously B+, plenty of room for improvement, because for us, and I know our grade scale, getting into that A- range from B+, that's a pretty big step, right?
And it's fair because to win the Stanley Cup, you have to be an A+. It's not like skaters where you can have a bunch of B+ for goaltending. What we did in 22 with the A- in Kemper, I think you could say that's not normal. Like the team we had in 2022 was godlike. It will never be able to assemble.
Very profound, yeah.
99% of the time, look at the Rangers. I'm watching the Rangers game right now, actually. They're 1-0. But Shesterkin is almost single-handedly going to possibly carry them to a Stanley Cup win because the Panthers simply can't beat him alone. And that's all. You have to have A+ goaltending. So that's a huge, huge jump. I don't think that we're giving him too much credit at a B because he's expected to be an A+ in order for us to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
Sure. And speaking of Rangers, my wife has it. She's got some company over, and they're watching the Rangers game. So
you'll know.
I just heard some loud chatter, and I checked, and sure enough, Chris Kreider scored a goal. So
was that?
Let's see, what was I talking about? So yeah, I think B for you, B+ for me. That's a fair range, you know. And again, I can see it swaying either way, but I would be curious to see, assuming he stays this offseason, which I don't see any reason you'd have to get rid of him unless the perfect deal shows up.
I would imagine they're just thankful that they don't have to worry about him when it probably would have been if we hadn't had such more pressing issues. But they're probably like, thank freaking God we don't have to deal with that because we have so many more issues to deal with.
And I'm wondering if next season, now talking about the tandem as a whole, if now that Annunen has kind of solidified himself as this backup goaltending position, this role that he'll be in, if you'll see maybe a few more games, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 more games out of Annunen.
And I think that'll make Georgiev for Georgiev. He played too many games. And the thing is, he always had to play the hard games. I mean, he played. It would be nice to get to the point where we can put Georgiev, we can take him out for like mental rest when needed, because he really didn't have the option for the mental rest in some of the more stressful games because we just didn't trust Annunen. So I think that more so than physical rest, when he's really struggling, to be able to give a couple more games to Annunen and having him as a solidified backup goaltender, I think is going to be huge, because we essentially didn't have a solidified backup goaltender that we truly
for 2 seasons.
Yeah,
2 seasons.
That's not fair.
Yep. I
mentally
think you're
and physically.
completely right. Yep, completely right. I think taking some load off of his shoulders, because Annunen can now A, showcase what he's capable of, and B, give Georgiev rest that he
And it's
needs
prepping Onanen to
is
ultimately be the starter when Georgie's contract is up. Lord knows we're not going to pay Georgie. Onanen is it, and this
kind of the Darcy Kemper type deal.
yeah.
But keep in mind that Georgiev this coming season, the 24-25 season, this will be his last year on his contract. He only signed a 3-year deal, if I'm not mistaken.
But he needs, it's a contract year, and I'm sure he knows that they're not going to resign him. It's not what we do. So honestly, we should see the best year of his life out of him this year, because he's basically working to prove himself not only to us, but to the league. And if he can make a deep run in the playoffs and show some consistency, somebody is going to throw cash at him.
Exactly.
Not
I
us.
mean, you saw what happened with Darcy Kemper, right?
$6 million as a backup
He's like a $6 million 4-year type thing, and look
Lindgren
what
started.
happened.
Lindgren's the reason they got in the playoffs.
So no shade against Darcy Kemper. I mean, he's not an absolute bust, but he lost his starting job, right?
I never would have that much, but I love him.
But I personally still can't get over the fact that we had him for a year. He comes in, we win the Stanley Cup, and he leaves. It's like
from Arizona. He came from the bottom of the barrel to being like the desirable it goalie.
That's right. So just crazy stuff. Okay. Jumping now into defense. Let's start with the newbie on the block here. Bless you. Bless you twice. Sean Walker, 29-year-old, acquired from the Flyers. Obviously, we didn't give him a midseason grade because it wasn't with the team midseason. So this final regular season grade is just going to be what he has, and that's it. So I'll go ahead and go first on this one. I was really impressed by Sean Walker. He's one of the players that I'd probably say he's probably third in line that I want him to get signed. Third or fourth in line that I want him to get signed. Right behind Middlestat and Drouin. I think just from what I've seen, I give him a solid B. Now granted, we've only seen him do a few games with the Avalanche, a little less than half the season, but 10 goals, 19 assists for 29 points. Pretty impressive, considering most of that, believe it or not, was actually from the Avalanche. And we got to see one of them scored live, which was cool, right?
The way that the soup get made with him, like that motor is has intangibles beyond his points, I think.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. So I think a B is a fair grade for him. Obviously, there's a lot that can be improved on. Will he reach Cale Makar type of status? Maybe. Who knows? It's doubtful, but he's 29.
29, okay.
So obviously, for what it's worth, I think the trade went by phenomenally, and we got the value out of that trade that I think makes it justified. So solid B, obviously. As a defenseman, great numbers. I mean, 10 goals for a defenseman, pretty all right. So I love his speed. I love his vision that he has on ice. He made a lot of fantastic stick work and skate work type deals. So a lot of fun to watch him. It was just one of those where when he had the puck, you didn't have to worry about him making a clown mistake or anything like that. He was just solid, which is all you need to ask for. So he gets a solid grade.
Yeah, I think I'm at a B minus. I B minus. I'm kind of between there. I think the B minus is I think we talked about it a little bit. Sorry, my allergies are terrible. He did have no points in the playoffs, which shocked me because he was very noticeable in the playoffs. But we definitely needed more from our defense in as a whole. But I don't think that we're going to be able to keep him. I really wish we could, because I love his grit. He feels like he is kind of a little bit of that McDermott. Man, he had some huge hits. He also had some really bonehead penalties occasionally, especially in the regular season more so. But I just love that guy works so hard. And even when it's not clicking for him, you can tell that he's still always looking. The big thing that I've noticed about some of our players is who's out there when we're getting our asses kicked and like game, when was the awful game? Was that game 4 that we lost Nik and Taze, or was that game 5?
Let's see. That would be 4.
Walker was one of those guys. Walker, Lehkonen, there was just a couple guys and Manson, like just still out there giving it their everything, trying to light a fire. We saw a little bit of it out of Ross Colton when even you've got Nathan McKinnon out there skating around like a pouty baby. Those are like when you see guys acting like big boys in those times, I think that's huge. But I've heard numbers about him possibly looking at getting like 5 or 6 mil on like a 3 or 4 year deal, which we definitely can't afford that. But I'm curious to see. I don't have a lot of faith in us keeping him because I feel like keeping him might be the difference in Drouin or not. But I'd really like him playing not with Jack Johnson a little bit more. I mean, I think him with like Gerard or Manson for a while, I'd love to see how that worked out, like with any extended play. I just feel like he kind of got the short end of the stick because it's really hard to take many liberties for his style, like doing really anything offensive when you've got Jack Johnson and you just can't really trust him. So yeah, I think I settle at like a B-, mostly just because the bad penalties and then the lack of offense, which they are particular in their like recruiting and looking for offensive D. So we needed, I mean, a couple more points out of him, or really, all of our defensemen would have been the difference in us staying in later or not. So yeah, but man, I like him a lot. I've heard also about him possibly just going back to the Flyers, which, ooh.
Yeah, that could be something. So before we go on to the next defenseman, Brad here had a question. Do we think we'll keep Georgiev? I personally say yes, just because now he's going to be going into a season where he has more tools to equip himself with, meaning less games that he has to continually play in, and with Annunen being the backup, being a contract year, I think the Avalanche will continue to roll with him. So, Britt, I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but
after that playoff performance, the Avs are notoriously one of those teams that like looks out for their guys, and we have a lot of respect for our people, and I just, beyond showing him the respect and letting him keep his net that he earned in finishing his contract, he earned it. They're comfortable. I think most people are comfortable at this point. We also just, that goal was really sweet, that Kreider goal. I don't know if you saw it. We don't have the assets or honestly like the time of day to even try to go out. If we were to get rid of Georgie, we would need to go out. I know that people want to be comfortable with Onanen as his name is just like the worst for me. Onanen as a starting goaltender, but he's not. He's absolutely not. So we would essentially have to go find a new starting goaltender, and we don't have the spoons or the cash for that right now. So
yeah, like I said, unless that perfect deal shows up where it's like, how could you turn it down? Yeah. I think you'll.
And there just won't be much better. There's 2 teams who need a goaltender that have a lot more assets that need it so bad that there's no way we would be able to compete for most of it.
Exactly.
For the very few goalies. Sounds like you've seen the Ullmark to Ottawa rumors coming out.
I've seen that, and I've also seen Draisaitl to San Jose. So
I love it.
How about that one?
Too crazy.
How about that one? Maybe we do an episode of hypotheticals. That would be a lot of fun. But thank you, Brad, for the question. Appreciate that. So yeah, just something to keep our eyes on throughout the summer. But I think Britt and I are both in the same camp as I think we'll keep them. Okay, moving on then for defensive players, we have Devon Taves. Okay, Britt, we'll let you go first on this one. 12 goals, 38 assists for 50 points. What'd you think?
This one was like really hard. So I guess we should have clarified, or at least I should have clarified. When I do grades, I generally try to do it in relation to their personal abilities, not just like, I don't want to like grade.
There's a grading curve
to Sam Girard, like, and that would just make everybody compared to Cale Makar. I like to compare them to their previous years, their highs and their lows that we've seen. And what did you hit 12 goals this year? Just felt like a really, really down year for Taves, with like some really strong peaks. I mean, when he was there, he was freaking there, but man, he was just, there were points in the season that he felt like such a turnover machine. It just felt like he wasn't even the Taves that we knew. I mean, he had a baby in December, right? They had a baby beginning of the
He
year.
didn't, but I think his wife did.
Oh, wow. I guess you can't do everything.
That's why
But
he gets a C+ from
I
me. No,
do always take that into account because, like, these guys do still live at homes with wives and newborn babies.
I
Like,
got families.
so, I think I settled on a B- for him. And I don't know if I'm just going to end up at a B- for everyone. I annoy myself when I get in too much of a rut, but I just, regardless, he still is like our core. He's, you know what I mean? Like, he's somebody that any team would be dying to have, but like for his, compared to what we know he's capable of and what we've seen of him, it felt like a B- kind of year.
Yeah. Yeah, you took the grade right out of my book. B- is exactly what I was going to give him. He didn't play awful, right? The numbers even show.
Sometimes he did. Sometimes he and
But
McCarr.
there were times, and that's
Right?
exactly what I was going to touch on, was there were times where he just made these
Turnovers.
un-Devon Taves like mistakes, and you're just like, what is this, right? It's like he was doing fine until he turns it over for some reason or another. But there were a lot of times, at least for me, the main reason why he got a B- on his particular scoring is just because there were a lot of times where you just forgot he was on the team. It was just kind of like the Andre Burakovsky disappearing act, where you're like, oh yeah,
right.
Which
there's guys we want to not know that Jack Johnson is invisible. There's guys where the best case scenario is they just blend in and don't do much, but Taves is, we expect a lot more.
He's a standout player.
Yeah.
And we signed him to a big contract, right? This season even, which obviously he totally deserves it, every dollar of it. Not saying that's not a valuable thing, but you would expect for just signing a new contract that there would be a much bigger oomph to do things, right? Now, granted, he does have his certain style of play and kind of cleaning up those grubby goals,
like adult and
yes. I think I know where you're going.
Florida scored. Florida scored.
Uh-oh. Is that why it's quiet?
Your wife out there cursing. Forsling. They picked him up off waivers.
Is that right?
Is that insane? He's one.
Crazy.
Oh my god. That might be the greatest waiver pickup of all time.
No kidding.
I'm like living and dying. It's so much more fun to cheer for, not fun, but there's such a different joy in hockey when you can cheer for teams willy-nilly. I want the Panthers to win just because I love Paul Maurice. And it's so nice to just not give a shit and then just switch willy-nilly and not be emotionally invested in it.
It's like you love them one round, hate them the next.
Yeah. And I just want Dallas to lose and Edmonton to lose. That's all I care. I usually cheer out of spite, like cheer against teams.
Accurate.
And then Florida or New York, either one can win. But
out of the East is preferred, definitely. But going back to Devon Taves, no, not a problem. Going back to Devon Taves, though, again, just a lot of these types of things where it almost felt like junior hockey. It's like fundamentals could really make these errors that he was making. So
he had a couple like over the boards penalties, because wasn't it him? And Bo had like 4 of them in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was just strange. So not his best year, but considering what we know, what he's capable of, that's why I think the B- is definitely deserved.
Still one of the top defenders in the league, but in relative, it's not what we anticipate out of him.
Yep, you're
or
exactly
what it's going to take for us to win a Stanley Cup. Clearly.
Exactly. Okay, moving on down the list here, we have Josh Manson. This one's tough.
I know, that's what.
8 goals, 17 assists for 25 points.
How many games did he play?
I think he played. Did he play in like?
He is so hard to judge.
76.
Which Josh Manson did we get this year, or this like
76?
Okay, wow, I didn't realize he played that many games.
Yeah, he had a really healthy season this year. Yeah, just because I was still remembering from last year when he was out for like 3 months, it felt like.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a record-setting year for him, which I did take into account. Given what he can do and the things that I've seen him do, I give him a B plus.
Yeah,
Believe it or not.
that's exactly what I am. We need
Just
to like bring some conflict into this because you and I always land on the exact for
that's
everything.
because we are professionals at analyzing this kind of stuff. Okay, we know exactly what we're looking at. No, but for Josh Manson, now granted, remember he's basically your enforcer / big body out on the ice, right? And 8 goals, 17 assists.
That still
That's
brings,
pretty all right
and
considering his role,
he
right?
makes some bonehead moves sometimes, but I've
He
said it before.
100%
I'm
does.
willing to swallow his occasional terrible plays for the fire and the like. He just has such, especially playoff Josh Manson. Man, nothing is better than playoff Josh Manson. I think
Yeah,
Josh Manson was
goals.
probably top 3 also for MVPs of the playoffs. That the depression game that we lost in Chushkin, did you see anybody out there more than Josh Manson and Sam Girard? Like as far as oh my God, those two were maniacs.
Yep. And that's actually the reason that I gave him a B plus is because throughout the season, there were so many times that I saw him stick handling, skating pretty quick. Like a lot of zone entries were done by Josh Manson and done
he got
well.
ripped off of a couple goals in the playoffs. He should have had a couple more, man.
Yeah, and I think he would have gotten double-digit goals had it not been for like Cogliano, aka the goal thief.
Put me in the nuts. Well, and just Josh Manson always seems to be there when it's one of those games. It's like somebody do something. It seems like he is one of the dudes, either fighting somebody or laying. Man, he laid some big hard checks against Dallas, and I love him, and I know that a lot of people see him as disposable, but he was absolutely crucial to our Stanley Cup. And people forget how incredible he was during that first run. And he has struggles in the regular season, but like I said, I value the playoffs more, and playoff Josh Manson is disgusting.
Yep, you're 100% right. So I think we're both in agreement there. B plus is around. I'm excited to see what this next year brings for him, considering he has taken another stride up. Again, I think that's the trend that he'll continue to follow.
He stays. It's sad because he is in discussion as probably the most disposable contract on the roster if we do decide to make room for a Drouin, but also going to be really hard to replace him. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens, but super just content with his play, and we'll hope that he stays on next year and he does even better. Okay, moving on the list, we have what's that guy? He won the Norris Trophy and like a Conn Smythe a couple years ago. Kind of got a little pencil mustache in the playoffs. What was the guy's name? We have Cale Makar. We have Cale Makar on this this grade that we're going to give him. So, Britt, I'll have you go first. What do you give a reigning Stanley Cup / Conn Smythe / Norris / Calder / whatever else trophy you want to give him?
It feels like super messed up and like I'm betraying him by giving him anything but an A+, but I really think that this year was like a B- for him. And it makes me feel kind of guilty, but also, you know how we always say like he's still like a top Norris contender, even though we've collectively decided that this isn't a great year for him. I think that he was plagued with a lot of nagging injuries this year. And just an off year for him and Taze together. It seemed like they both were just a little bit off, and it felt like it was just constantly one little emotional or physical issue after another. We just could not find any sense of stability, but it just really felt like he was out of sync with the game a little bit this year and went down when he's been on this constant upward trajectory. It really felt like we had a lull this year. I have no doubt that next year he's going to come out, and I feel like next year is going to be like a year for the guys. I hate that we wasted the Nathan McKinnon year, but I really feel like Makar's really having a long off season again. Hopefully they can I think that they said that he has to have a small procedure done. I can't remember on what, but
Nothing big, yeah.
hopefully really get healthy this summer, and that should make a huge difference for us next year. So yeah, I
Yep.
kind of settled at a B- just in relative terms, because you know that truly at his best, he is the best defenseman in the entire world. And I just genuinely believe that. And I've watched a lot of Cale Makar.
Interesting. Okay, Britt, this is a grade where we disagree. We disagree. I give Cale Makar an A-.
That's fair.
And you are 100% correct with your judgment. No questions.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm
The
just
reason I give him the A- is because I'll read you a little stat line, couple stat lines. The year they won the cup, 77 games played, same as this year, keep in mind, 28 goals, 58 assists for 86 points. Keep that in mind. This year, 77 games played as well, 21 goals, so 7 goals less, 69 assists for 90 points. This was his best year to date, points-wise.
What was his plus minus? Can you see?
His plus minus, let's see.
Which I know an irrelevant stat, but it's kind of irrelevant.
He was a plus 15. Whereas, and you are correct, you would be correct in this one, he was a plus 48 the year they won the cup.
And see, that's what the plus minus is an irrelevant stat unless there's something wildly out there that shows his offensive game this year. It's really his defensive game this year that just
and that's
the turnovers
exactly
in
it.
the net, like the defensive zone turnovers. There was times that I text you and said, I cannot even wrap my head around our two like dudes, the turnovers. Like it's hard to even imagine that they would even be capable like of reminding us that they're so human. But that's what I think. It's mostly judge, but that is a lot of points from Cale Makar.
It is.
So got a lot of posts this year too.
His most points in any season at 90. He'll eclipse 100 next year. I'm calling the shot now.
And that's what Erik Karlsson was like odd when he got.
The big thing that it was in the minus category is because, and you're exactly right, those dumb turnovers and whatnot, stupid little tic-tacky errors, but.
And that's what I always try to remember too, that Taves and Makar run with, you have to remember that they have such smaller margins for error in the speed and the the high level of things that they're trying to do versus what Jack Johnson is doing. He plays safe. He makes safe passes. He leaves himself in plays in a way that leaves him a lot safer, wider margins for error. And that's why he doesn't get to do it. And then he randomly gets his like little fancy shot. But normally that's why he's not going to have any big all-star plays. But Makar and Taves do operate under such smaller margins that when they do make those mistakes, they're a lot louder. But yeah, it's the defensive play entirely that bothers me. I think I have to switch to it. We'll go for a B+ because of the offense, but
woohoo!
Maybe even a B. I don't know. So yeah, that sways me a little bit, but I like me a defensive D. And
that's
we just
true.
From
you are a defenseman for a reason. That you do have a point. Yeah. But considering that he was only second in defensive points to Quinn Hughes by 2. And this is supposedly an off year for Cale Makar.
Yeah, and that's what we're all talking about Makar, like he's halfway in the grave this year when people are like, hey, he's still like there. He's a Norris nominee. NHL doesn't even realize like how down on Makar we are because they're just seeing points and like that goal this year. Every year he's got to have a goal. He's got like the goal, and we're definitely a lot more critical because we are also a lot more, like we know a lot better what he's capable of. But yeah, it is hard to remember he's probably going to be number 2 for Norris if Quinn Hughes wasn't out there just being loud and ornery and sad looking.
that's also true. So if he was going to get an A+, he'd have the same exact season as the cup winning season. But again, super solid. Like like I said, the
we
only
did
thing
score
were
a
just those.
buttload of goals this year. We just let in a book.
Yeah, there were a lot of goals. Keep in mind, a lot of those assist points, of those almost 70 assist points, were redeflected goals where it's like, okay, that should have been Kale's. Like he could have gone to 30, not a problem.
One of the. We just watched the All-Star game, the All-Star things today. We rewatched them, Mac and I did, and like he is one of the true defensemen that can score off a slap shot left in the NHL. Like slap shots are almost gone because most guys can't give themselves the time and space. He has got a serious slap shot. I think one of the hardest in the NHL at this point. And he's one of the very few guys that you see scoring from the point on the regular. I mean, it's truly incredible. If you really like pay attention to watching other teams, you don't see many slap shots make it through, and that's something that doesn't get talked about enough with him, I think, because his slap shot is massive. God, I would never want to get in front of one.
Yeah, absolutely. Hardest shot winner, which was surprising to me.
Insane. Yep. No, you would never think that little teenage looking
baby face
yeah
wins the hardest shot competition. I thought for sure that was going to go back to Pedersen, but
yeah, it's crazy.
I was wrong.
This Rangers is getting heavy, buddy. Man, they're getting real heavy. Huh? Did you see? Was it Chris Kreider tried to throw Kachuk's mouth guard into the stands of the game?
I did see that. He actually did, but apparently Kachuk got it back.
Suspension. Oh, really? If he would have gotten it out, technically, if you throw anything out of the rink, it's a suspension, like even a mouth guard. Is that insane?
Is that right? That's crazy.
I don't think that they would have held up with that. I think they would have
not. Probably not.
But his mouth guard grossed me out so
much. All right. Moving on to just a couple more defensemen on the regular roster. Jack Johnson, we'll move to him. I will start with this one, and it's like I have two ways I could go with this. I could either give him a solid B or a solid C. And I don't know which, just because there are a lot of times where I'm like, why is Jack Johnson being the fastest skater on the ice right now? Why is he the only one given 100% right now? Or there's, what is Jack Johnson doing over there?
Hell, is Jack Johnson?
Why is he out of position? Why this? So I think I'm going to try to go right halfway and give him a C+.
Yeah.
A lot of times with Jack Johnson, again, he's a favorite in the locker room. He's a really good guy, super soul personality. 3 goals, 13 assists. For what it's worth, those numbers are fine considering he's the bottom pairing.
Well, and what's his plus minus 2? Do you have his at all?
His plus minus is also 15.
He is he's like one of those like. Safety blanket is always what comes to mind. He's just like the good old boy that you can just kind of throw out there and expect him to always make the smartest, easiest play. And I think I'm probably at a C+ too, because last year what we would have thought was like a B, we did see his feet are going out quickly. I don't think we see him back next year. I don't think we can bring him back next year and call him a 7th, because Jared Bednar will not play him as a 7th D. Jared Bednar will to play him. I swear he played so many minutes. It's wild. But he's just very trustworthy. He is a very safe player.
Yep, he is. And so and all things considered, a C+ is not like an atrocious grade for him.
No, it's perfectly sufficient for what he is and what he's
perfectly suitable, because if he went out and scored like 13 goals, yeah, he's getting an A. I don't care what you say.
Exactly.
Right?
Always
he just goes and just kind of. He's that good filler player between main rotations. You know what I mean?
Let the boys rest. Yes, Makar and Taze, let them breathe and be able to look down and touch them without having to worry about the puck going in the meantime.
Yep. So there were a lot of times where he was shining bright, and then other times where he was as dull as a lump of coal. But I think C+ is pretty accurate.
He would get burned. He made some really poor choices, and it was hard to watch, especially with Sean Walker. With Sean Walker being new to the system, there were times that Jack Johnson would get caught, and Sean Walker not quite reading the play right, and it looked bad.
The honorable mention good note that I will add with Jack Johnson, though, was besides the fact that he was really speedy quick, even though his legs were giving up on him, he would have those bursts and get that zone quick,
Yeah.
right?
Well, him and Cogliano were supposedly like two of the fastest players in the NHL in their younger days, which Cogliano still is fast, but not
still quick.
It was definitely down. But
and the other thing I did enjoy was a lot of times he's on the ice with McKinnon, right? Which was interesting. But whenever
but he's definitely
whenever we had sustained offensive zone time and he got the puck, he did exactly what I wanted him to do in his role. Fire it on net. Just fire it on net and have something happen. And that's exactly what he did. So super good. You know, he did what I wanted him to do, at least. So C+ for him.
And clearly he's what Bednar wanted, because it was never a question that he was always in the lineup. I mean, he's beloved by this association, for good or for bad.
This is true. This is very true. Okay, moving on. Last guy on the main rotation for defense, Samuel Girard, Mr. Sammy G. Okay, Britt, I feel like we're going to have some opposite opinions here. So why don't you go first, and then I will be the bad guy. How does that sound?
Oh, God, the bad guy. Yeah, I've got straight up A-. I feel like this was such a comeback year, and I feel like we don't know how long he struggled with his addiction issues, but to see him last year was kind of down, and so definitely people wanting to trade him. So I think when you take, he was a beast in the playoffs the year we won the cup, up until he broke his whole ass sternum. Last year I was concerned that he was still playing with lingering injuries, and now I'd imagine that he was playing with a mix of lingering injuries / anxiety, depression, and adult like addiction issues. So this year I just felt like his turnaround and seeing him play sober, healthy, and happy, I felt like he was one of the best defensemen, one of the most notable defensemen. I still get the shivers when he pulls a little spinny boy. Like, it still makes me so
tornado
every time I see the tornado. Like, it'll never stop. And he just I love him and Manson together. I just love seeing them play together. I feel like they're like Calvin and Hobbes, like just big and little, spinny boy. And then you've got Josh Manson is just going to literally bulldoze his way through anything. And I just, I'm so proud of him, but I just feel like in relative terms, he has finally gone above what we would have expected out of him if we had thought that maybe the 2022 year was his peak. And we're not paying him anything, man. People that want to trade him, he's going to have the most valuable contract in the NHL in the next 2 years, really.
Probably. Yeah. So A-.
A-. Everybody knows to come. I don't care. We all know how I feel.
And
proud
and
mama.
You can feel what you want to feel, and that's okay.
Oh, no. Man.
That being said,
remember,
the good cop has spoken, and now it's the bad cop's turn. I give Samuel Girard a C+.
Yeah.
Now, Britt, before you pull out your flamethrower and try to torch me over the airwaves, let me explain two things. First, the reason I can't give him, I feel like I can't give him anything higher than that, is because he spent a good chunk of the season in rehab. I love it. I support it. I'm all for it. Totally great. He was gone for a big chunk of time. So personally, to me, I would find it hard to say, yeah, for those 50 some odd games, same thing. He didn't do bad, right? The second thing that I know he is capable of this, and I've pulled up in the seasons past of what he's able to do, and I just think his output could be better.
Yeah,
he did. Now, that being said, the shining things that I do love about him was he was a demon with that puck. He had the puck handling skills on point. Like, he very rarely got any turnovers. He was hitting really hard, as if that whole broken neck thing in the cup run didn't happen.
You can see him get some stability. He's just never had put together a full season of just you know?
Mm-hmm.
Always
Yep.
something. So hopefully in the next 2 years.
And like I said, it's nothing of his own doing really,
Yeah.
but I would have liked to see him take advantage more of what he had, right?
Yeah.
With those 59, I think,
Got a
games
lot of
that he
minutes.
played. He had a ton of minutes, obviously, and like I said, he didn't flub anything up. He wasn't a liability on the ice, but there were a lot of those where I was like, okay, he should have shot there when instead he passed,
Yeah.
and that pass
Yeah,
ended
he
up turning
did.
into nothing,
Yeah.
right? Just a couple of those, and I am being harsher on him because I know he can
Because you
play.
hate him, you hate
A
Samuel Girard.
I, I know he can play at an elite type level. So I can totally see where you're coming from, and I don't disagree whatsoever.
Yeah, no,
But
I totally I
from
really
my
hope that
side,
next year we can
you
see him
know,
put it all together between
mm.
health and happiness, and it'd be good to see what
So
a full year looks like.
um, exactly. I want to see what fully healthy now that this whole problem with him is out of the way. I want to see a full season. I bet you he could get to 10 goals
Yeah.
and so
Oh, yeah.
on.
I think
You know,
more, man. Sometimes you gotta wonder, like, love to see some other people, like, up on the side of Cale Makar or Devontae, see someone like him play with them.
exactly.
Wish we
Yep.
would have
I
seen
I
some
think
stuff this year.
I think he could put up, like Josh Manson type numbers, but still have that finesse, that skate that
Yeah,
he has, which he did show this year. So, but like
yeah.
I said, I give him a C plus just because I couldn't find it in me to justify
That's
59 games as saying,
oh,
with what you did.
wow.
So anyway, so now we've pinned the halo on Brit and the horns on me. We'll go ahead and just do one more in the supporting cast, but we'll kind of package deal these ones because they all played pretty similar, and that is Sam Malinsky and Caleb Jones. We'll kind of put those two in one package and then call
And
it
I
a
know
day.
because
So
I'm like high on Malinsky and low on Jones. Jones just had a rough couple last games.
sure, and you can grade them accordingly, but I'm just saying we'll throw them into one grade. So I'll go ahead and start. Sam Malinsky for me got a B minus, and Caleb Jones got a D.
Yeah, it's
Just a
pretty much
solid D.
exactly where I sit. And I know that I am tainted with Caleb Jones, those two gnarly penalties. Was that the last game that he got those two penalties where I was like, dude,
I believe so. Yeah.
oh my God, and they were both like hooking penalties, and one of them was super weak, but still, like, if you already got one stick infraction in the, like, don't do it again. Be extra careful. But I'm really hopeful, and I'm very excited for Malinsky. I love Malinsky. I like the way he moves, and I feel like he's a very emotional player that's going to have a lot of upsides. He's definitely raw. He didn't have like incredible games, but better than you would generally expect for someone like him coming up. And Caleb Jones, he's just kind of your dude that he's around, you can trust him. He's not going to do great. He's going to mess up, like, not he's a little more erratic than someone like Jock Johnson, and that's why he's not a mainstay, but I don't think will he be back next year? I don't think he's got another contract with the Eagles.
Speaking about Malinsky or Jones?
Jones. No, I think Malinsky is a part of our long-term plan for the core.
I think,
we
yeah,
need
I would agree.
To come through desperately. We're going to be relying on those cheap contracts like that because we don't have a whole lot of them to utilize.
Yep, you're 100% right. Malinsky reminded me a lot of Brad Hunt from last season, where he just came in and did a solid job and was rewarded with a few goals.
Yeah.
So I when it was time for call-ups and stuff like that, when like Manson or Gerard were out for a few games, I was hoping Malinsky was the guy that was called up more often.
I was really bummed to see them call up Seth Jones instead of Malinsky, which it is a big difference experience-wise. Seth Jones has been around. So I don't know. I would have liked to see Malinsky some, but that's a big ask. You can ruin people pretty quick by doing that. So
yeah, exactly, right. And so C plus or C, what I give him, a C plus. Super great for Malinsky. He showed that he has a pretty solid future should he continue to play like that.
Yeah, I would anticipate next year we'll be up higher. Like, he's got a lot of room for growth.
I think, if he plays his way up onto the main roster too, all the more to him.
I think I would imagine we see him possibly even right off the starting game.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Seth Jones, Caleb Jones. I think he's a D, and that's kind of what he's going to be. Sometimes he might come out and randomly give you a B, but for the most part, he's a D, and that's just kind of who he's going to be.
He just felt kind of more like a body on the ice,
Mhm.
and one that was like it was a pretty mistake prone body on the ice.
Turnovers and penalties, and the penalties are extra egregious.
Penalties are definitely where it's like, okay, that was really costly, and a lot of times it turned into goals.
Yeah.
You know, granted, our penalty kill didn't really help with that, but just the fact that he's caused them, it was pretty tough because, like, you of all people should not be the one causing.
You're supposed to be here to be invisible. Like the penalties,
you're supposed to be there to get in, do your job, get off.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. But whereas with Malinsky, I'm like, if Jack Johnson doesn't come back, I wouldn't mind Malinsky as in a regular rotation to take that spot.
Way.
Bottom pairing, you know.
Possibly even some kind of rotation with Jack Johnson, should Jack Johnson come back. But
sure,
I just hate that Bednar refuses to make Jack Johnson. I thought that Jack Johnson should have been the 7th. I think he played too much in the playoffs this year. I think he played too much throughout the year this year. So if Jack Johnson or if Bednar would actually like commit to not playing Jack Johnson full time, I would love to see them kind of rotate, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Obviously, we're going to talk about the forwards next week because that's going to be the one. That's
when do they announce the Hart Trophy winner? Norris and
probably
Hart.
Right around. I think it's going to be either right before the finals or in the middle of it.
Because didn't weird timing. Dale go to it like after the West?
He went to it and then came back and played in the final. I remember that. But I can't remember if it was right before or like after game 2 or something like that. I thought it was right before the first game. So we'll have to see.
That's what I thought too, because he had to fly all the way. Didn't he have to go from Tampa to like Edmonton or something for the show for the awards?
Where was the show? I thought the show was in Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't it? But either way, he still had to fly a distance.
Yeah.
So now that they're eliminated, they can just go. McKinnon can win the Hart. Makar can win the Norris. Georgiev as the random dark horse wins the Vezina, and everything's right in the world. But regardless,
so dead set on Swayman as the Vezina winner, but like Shesterkin is like really probably deserves it. I think the Rangers are not as good as, we know what I mean. They're good, but Shesterkin has really stole some stuff for him. Every time I start like doubting him, and he has Brian's goalie pads, so I'm in.
There you go. So stick around next week when we talk about the forwards and give them their season grades. And thank you for sticking around with us this week to talk about the goalies and the defense. Obviously, they're not the glitz and glamour ones, but they are kind of your workhorses. They're your defense and reason that pucks don't go in the net more than anything. So exactly, the unsung heroes, but they had to be talked about. Obviously, a lot of good, but a lot to be improved on for next season as well. So excited to see kind of what happens with maybe Sean Walker, with Jack Johnson, Malinsky, you name it. Cale Makar, he'll win the Hart, right? He'll win the Hart.
Some news will start coming out eventually. We'll see some signings or some, who knows when. Hopefully before free agency. They can't make us.
Free agency is July. Is it 1st or 2nd?
I don't know.
It's right before Independence Day. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But stuff is gonna hit the wall then. So be prepared. So anyway, thank you once again, everyone, for following this episode of the Cluster Puck Podcast. Much appreciated. Your viewership. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow the MHRT Network so you can get notified when shows like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. You can follow them on the various social media platforms of your choosing. If you want to follow us specifically, you can follow us at the Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook and at Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. With that being said, Western Conference Finals are going. Eastern Conference Finals are going. I'm sure we have our preferences. I'm sure you have your preferences. Let us know who you're going for the rest of the remainder of the season. Who do you want to see lift the cup? What are your season grades for the Avalanche players?
How
Let
off
us
are we
know.
on our grades?
How unknowledgeable are we? Let us know.
Incoming Georgie
And
arguments and nothing else.
exactly. We're just going to get bombarded with, why are you giving Georgiev such high thing? It's because we know him. We know him. We know what he's capable of. So, okay. With that being said, we hope you guys have the rest of the week very enjoyable and
Have a week.
have a week. Sorry, I'm tired. I've been traveling a lot. I've been traveling a lot.
You deserve. No,
have the week that you can, and just make it to the weekend. I'm talking to myself more than anyone, but as always, see you later and go Avs go.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.